Hello and welcome to Therapy Express with Rosanna. Thank you so much for watching. Today we are going to talk about the dysfunctional family, which in essence means we're going to talk about every family. Every family has a level of dysfunction. Granted, there are gradients from maybe a little bit dysfunctional to very extremely dysfunctional. The one we're going to talk about is more the extremely dysfunctional family. Families like the Brady Bunch or Full House, where everything is hunky-dory, blended families together, all that doesn't exist. On TV, it makes for a fun little family show, but in real life, it is not possible to have that because we all have our own baggage, our own issues, our core beliefs that interfere with that being a reality. So what defines a dysfunctional family? There's conflict, misbehavior, there's abuse, there is constant tension within the family members, yelling, screaming. People are forced to accept negative behavior as though that were the norm. So all of that goes on. I'm going to describe some of the characteristics that are inherent in dysfunctional families. So I'm going to start by talking about the family with addiction. This family is one of the more serious ones because when you have an addicted person, a parent, they cannot be a real parent. They are sometimes there, sometimes not. They can be violent. They can just be falling asleep. Either way, an alcoholic parent is not available to the members of the family. The next one is perfectionism. And in families where kids, one or more, are expected to be perfectionists, there is a huge problem. And I knew of a family who expected their son and daughter to be perfect, especially when it came to their school studies. They would make them study in the closet. They would make sure that they had A's in every grade. There was a lot of pressure. The son, unfortunately, not unfortunately at first, he went to university, and for 4 years, everyone thought that he was going to school. At the end of the 4th year, when he was supposed to graduate, he did not. It came out that he had not been going to school at all. So he went up to the top of the building and jumped off, which actually destroyed the entire family. But that child, that young adult, had so much pressure on him that suicide was the option that he thought was best. The next thing is uncertainty and fear. When you are in a situation where the family is very dysfunctional, there is constant uncertainty. What is the parent going to do? What is the parent going to say? You are hyper vigilant and fearful about the next thing that's going to come down the pike. And imagine living like that. You just don't know. Are they going to be in a mood that is going to be bad? Are they going to be happy and all of a sudden turn on you? It's very disarming to have a parent that you don't know how they're going to act at any given moment. The next one is conditional love. In this family, if you do and say what you're expected, then you're fine. You're loved, and you may even get some things that you want. If, on the other hand, you speak your mind and you don't agree or you don't do what you're supposed to do, then that love is withdrawn. So what happens in a family like this? You grow up always trying to be a pleaser, trying to make sure that you get that love. And eventually, as an adult, you will try to find that love everywhere you can because it was conditional in your home. So you do whatever you need to do to make sure you get that for yourself later on in your life. Then there's the home that absolutely has no boundaries. This is a home where maybe the parent opens up your mail and reads it, or reads through your diary, or you in this family become parentified. That means that the kid becomes a parent to the parent, or becomes a parent to the other siblings. Roles are completely blurred here. And imagine now you're a kid, maybe 10, 11, whatever. Now you have to parent your own mother or father or your siblings. And so when there are no boundaries, you grow up in a very fuzzy type of environment. And that's cause for alarm. And especially as you get older, you don't learn how to have boundaries. And maybe you don't even know what's possible until you go to somebody else's home and someone doesn't just burst in the door without knocking and so forth. So that's another sign of dysfunction in the family. The next one is a home where there's lack of intimacy. In this home, there's no touching, no signs of affection or love. The parents are very cold. It could just be maybe one parent or both parents, very cold. And it's almost like you're cut off. And as a child from this home gets older, they don't know how to express love because they never learned it. And some part of them may be always yearning to get that love, and maybe they can become very needy as they get older, or it could be the reverse. They could be just as cold and cut off from emotion themselves and not know exactly how to be able to get that in their lives. The next one is lack of communication. And the communication in these types of families are very poor. They are constantly either yelling, bickering, or not communicating at all. People in these types of families are afraid to voice their opinions because they're not going to be accepted or valued in any way. So oftentimes you can just keep quiet and not say anything. But also in these types of families could be the reverse as well, where there's this yelling to get your point across, screaming matches to get you to do what they want you to do. So you can see how negative that could be for a person growing up in that environment. Next, we're going to talk about the roles that siblings or kids in a family take on, especially in families with addiction. The first one is the caretaker, the enabler. And this kid takes on the role of caring for the person with the problem. So if your father comes home drunk, they are the ones that are taking the dad, walking him to the bed, covering them up with a blanket, and making sure that the father, or it could be a mother who has drug problems or whatever it is, they want to make sure that the parent doesn't suffer the consequences of their bad behavior. And what this actually does is that they are not going to feel a need to change it because they're being coddled. And why would they want to leave that comfort zone? So they can just continue to drink, do drugs, or whatever it is because they know that someone is actually taking care of them. The next one is the scapegoat. This one, actually, this kid takes a bullet for the team. They are the ones that are constantly getting into trouble. They're getting expelled from school. Maybe they commit a crime and then they get put in the juvenile hall or whatever. It is bad for this kid. And oftentimes, if the scapegoat somehow leaves the house or gets better, guess what? Somebody else in the house will take over that role. That's how synchronized the family unit is. The next one is the mascot. What does this kid do? He makes everybody laugh. He is the funny one. He is the clown. And whenever there is any hostility between the parents or the siblings, this kid is going to take over and he is going to be making everybody laugh, doing their antics and so forth, because that is the way they have found to be able to take the attention away from the hostility or violence or whatever is going on and put it on themselves. It actually works, but this kid is not happy because they know that it's all superficial. They're just doing this to be able to get the parents to stop what they're doing. The next one is the hero. And the hero is usually a firstborn. They are the overachievers. They are the poster child for the family. And this kid does everything right. And you know why? He makes the family look normal. That's their job. They look good to the outside world. That means their family looks good. So there is a lot of pressure for the hero to be perfect and to look good so that the family can. And this is kind of what happened, as I mentioned, with that boy or young man who ended up going to the top of the school and jumping off. He was the firstborn. He was the hero of the family, but he was also unable to complete the task because he was under too much pressure. And the last one is the lost child, the quiet one. This kid tries to stay away from all the drama that is happening. They're in their room, they watch TV, they read, they are away from everything. They don't want to be involved. This kid isolates himself so that he doesn't have to deal with all the negativity that is going on in the family. And what happens is that as they get older, they are now having problems with relationships because they don't know how to interact with other people because they've been so isolated throughout their lives. So that is another thing that they take with them into adulthood. These are the typical roles that are taken on by the kids and siblings in a family just to make the family survive. Okay, so now we're going to go on to the next part, which is what are some of the things that happen with these kids as they become adults? One, there is social isolation. If they didn't learn how to be in a good family environment or they were always hypervigilant, they may isolate just for survival. Two, they can go on and develop behavioral disorders as they get older, and that can affect everything: their work, their school, relationships with other people. The next one is that people that come from these extreme situations become very self-critical. They lived with that. They lived with someone putting them down, demeaning them, making them feel as though they were not loved or cherished in their home. So they become very self-critical and also develop very low self-esteem. I've talked to many people that have come from these dysfunctional type families, and they think very little of themselves. They don't think they're worthy of love. They don't think they are lovable. That's because in their family of origin, they didn't get this. They never felt that love. And they also can develop mental illness, mental disorders, anxiety, depression. All of this can grow from coming from that environment. So you see how it all adds up. And now you have adults who are functioning in the world, but not functioning in the best way that they possibly can because they have all this garbage behind them. And some of it, even though they've gotten away, some of it is still on them. So what causes dysfunctional families? It could be a number of things. It could be mental illness. Maybe there was mental illness in the family and it got passed on, or the person maybe has bipolar or depressive disorder and they're acting out in the best way that they can. Or there is a family history of abuse. And now they grew up in that environment, and now the parents are perpetrating that abuse in their current family. Maybe in the last family, they yelled and screamed and neglected their kids. So now they come into this new family and they do the same thing. Or it could be medical problems. Maybe the person got hit in the head, and if you have head trauma, oftentimes you can experience a total change in personality. Maybe that person was very passive and all of a sudden they've had a traumatic accident and now they're completely different and they're angry and volatile, and maybe they crossed the line one day because of their condition. So that also could be a factor in this. And the last one here is life circumstances. I used to work with a lot of people who had horrific accidents in their workplace. I'm talking, losing hands and grinders and just terrible accidents, falling off roofs and being completely incapacitated. So these people used to be the livelihood for the family, and now they can't work. They've lost a hand or a leg, and now they feel like they have no identity. And because of that, many of these people became depressed, anxious. And not only that, but some of them became a little bit violent because they were so angry about what happened and the system that they were in, and they felt like there was no hope and that they would always be like that. So that changed the entire dynamic of the family. All right, so let's say you came from a dysfunctional family, as we all did, but if you came from a bad one, a really bad one, what can you do? My first thing to suggest is to reach out for help from a professional. This professional can help you heal, and they can help you process everything that went on. They can validate your experience, and they can also point out that it was not a normal situation, that growing up in that kind of environment was deleterious to your health. So this is what a therapist can do in a very loving environment, non-biased, and they can just be there to guide you through the process. 2 is examine the role that you played. One of the roles that you had, is it valid now? I know when you were in the family, the role of the mascot or the hero, maybe it was relevant to that time. But now as an adult with your own family, is it still relevant? Do you need it, or is it that it's just no longer necessary in your life? So take a look at the role you played. It might be interesting to be able to talk to your other siblings, if you have them, and talk about what you feel or felt that your role was in that particular family that you grew up in. Number 3, keep a safe distance. If your family was very toxic and there was severe dysfunction, then it may be that you can't be in that family system for your own protection and for your families. Let's suppose that you had abuse in your family, verbal abuse or physical or sexual abuse even. You don't want to bring your children, if you have any, into that environment. So in the case like that, you need to keep away, because if that person perpetrated a sexual assault on you, there's no cure for that. So they may still be around. Maybe the mother protected the father, which happens in many cases. And now you're a grown woman with your own family. You don't want to take your kids there to see grandpa. That's just not what's going to happen for the protection of your children now. Also remember that when you were a child, you had no voice, you had no power. But guess what? As an adult, you do. And oftentimes, when you go back to the house, you revert back to that powerless being. But that's not the case. You as an adult can make different choices today. And you have the power to choose differently and to do things in a way that is not hurtful to you or to your family now. Number 5, learn to set boundaries. Remember, if you came from a family that didn't have any boundaries, learn to set them now. Say no when you need to. Respect the privacy of your children and your spouse. Don't open their mail. Don't root through their things unless you suspect drug abuse or something. That's a whole different case. But just in an ordinary type situation, respect people's privacies. Draw that line. There are things you just don't do. You don't walk into the bathroom as your daughter is taking a shower. Things like that. So learn to set boundaries and incorporate them today, and you're going to have a much healthier family. Number 6, do not allow your past to define you today. That was your past. Yes, it impacted you and it formed some of your beliefs, but you can now learn that there are different ways to be. So create a different story. Don't continue to repeat the same narrative that you've been saying for the life before you. Now create a new story, a better story, one in which you are the hero and you have the power to be a better person. Number 7, keep away from the people who cause you the most stress. There are those family members that no matter what are going to be very stress-provoking. Stay away from them or limit the time that you talk to them. If they call you on the phone, set your timer, talk to them for a minute or two and say, listen, I got to go. I'll talk to you soon, okay? So limit yourself so that you are not in a situation that is going to cost you constant stress and anxiety. And lastly, the family in which you grew up doesn't have to be the template for your new family. Remember what I said. You have the power now to create a different type of family, of environment, a healthy type of place for your children to grow into. And even if you don't have children, you can just feel that even though you were a part of something that was very negative, you can create something very positive today. You have that in you. And remember, no matter what your parents did or said, it does not take away from the value of you. You are worthy of love and you are worthy of respect. So believe that for yourself so that you can teach others how to treat you. All right, that's it for today. Thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you like this channel, and subscribe and turn on your notifications and look for me next week. Until then, make every moment count. Bye.